Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good meeting. Today I'm going to talk to you about Cellares and how we can mitigate your cell therapy development and manufacturing risks. But first I'm going to take an overview of the technology so you can get a sense of the technology, and then we'll talk about how, so you can have, so the technology is a reason to believe. And then I'll go over how that technology can mitigate your development and manufacturing risks. So this is what we're attacking, right? All of us in the cell therapy, the issue is not that our therapies, the therapies in the marketplace don't work or are not safe. They absolutely work. They're absolutely safe. They're just not available enough. So this is what Cellares exists. This is why it exists, and this is what we're attacking, is the availability of these therapies. So there's two technologies. There's the manufacturing part, which is the Cell Shuttle. It produces 16 batches at once. It sits in a clean, non-classified space. It can handle most modalities. The only limitation is it has to be suspension cells. If we only manufactured and did not attack the QC reality, which is a dirty little secret that the manufacturing sites, a third to half of the manufacturing site is dedicated to QC. If we didn't do that, we'd be kicking the can down the road and having another bottleneck down the road. So while the Cell Shuttle handles the automated manufacturing, one single Cell Shuttle on a normal 10-day process can produce about 800 batches a year. The shorter the process, the more batches a year that we can produce. Our manufacturing sites in New Jersey, Europe, and Japan are going to have about 40 of these facilities, so that's a productive capacity of between 40,000 and 100,000 doses, depending per facility. That's depending on the length of the process. So like I said, when you move to the QC side, you have to handle that too, so we also have a secondary technology that we call the Cell Q. The Cell Q is designed to be throughput matched to the Cell Shuttle. One Cell Q can process up to 6,000 batches a year. So one Cell Shuttle roughly matches up with one Cell Q roughly matches up with 6 Cell Shuttles. 90% less labor, 90% less clean rooms. This is why we can offer prices for our batches in the contract manufacturing setting of up to 50% less in batches. Let's go now a little deeper into the technology of the consumables. We have two consumables. We have the cartridge, and we have the sterile liquid transfer bottles. The sterile liquid transfer bottles mate to the cartridge to move liquids in and out. That's either to move in reagents or pull out reagents, waste, samples, all of that stuff. So it's all done in an automated way. There's only one cartridge. There's only one shuttle design. And it accommodates all of the manufacturing of all the different cell types. What does that do for us? That we only have to manufacture one cartridge. So we have one SKU for everybody. So this is why later on I'm going to be talking to you about how you can take advantages of economies at scale at even very low doses, because all of our clients, whether they're in clinical or commercial or whatever, or anywhere in between, they're all using the same cartridge and using the same bottles, so we're only producing one. So you're already getting economies at scale at very low doses. To that, because we only have one consumable, the cartridge is the same, we move all the variability to the software. So the software is what drives the machinery. The software, all the capability is sitting there in the cartridge and in the machinery. It is actuated and executed through the software. So the software has a lot of advantages having a software-driven manufacturing process. There are other automated systems. They tend to require hardware changes from process to process, which means that that hardware needs to be revalidated. You need to do a lot of different kinds of work to that. You don't do that with the Cellares process. It's the software that actuates everything. So that's at the equipment level. The software is actuating all of the equipment. But now you move that software up to the site level, at the manufacturing site level. Now all of that software is integrated across end to end, and it's all digital. It's all digital across all of the processing, from the intake to the ERP to the MES to the LIMS, all of that, of course, electronic C of A at the end of it. So because the software is actuated, everything internally to the equipment, you can take that up to the industrial level at the facility. But then when you think about it, actually, let me go back one more. Now, if you start thinking about the whole facility now is on software, Now you can start thinking about what does tech transfer look like, right? What does tech transfer look like from site to site? Well, when you go from site to site, it is a software exchange. It is functionally instantaneous tech transfer. Of course, there are regulatory steps. You're going to have to run some batches and do some to compare the batches on from one site to the other. But operator training is very low. The software, the shuttles are the same. The equipment is the same. So the transfer is functionally instantaneous. So fast technology transfers from one device to another device. So each cell shuttle is a backup to the other. Each site is a backup to each other site, and you can move across the planet fairly quickly from IDMO factory to IDMO factory. Also, there's a significant reduction in the time you need to revalidate equipment. You can accommodate several processes, and you can accommodate the whole process inside of the cell shuttle with the software, so you don't have to keep revalidating. If you change your process, you're not revalidating equipment. You're doing comparability and all that, but you're not revalidating equipment because it's a software change. Economies of scale, I talked about earlier on. It's only one SKU, so you're getting economies of scale. So even if you're a biotech, even in your first in human, even if you're in your early clinical, or even preclinical and doing work there, you're already taking advantages of economies of scale because we're making these units for everybody. Minimal staff and training for each technical transfer. So we can get up and going with your process in another site very quickly because the staff is not doing that much. They're loading the cartridge and then taking the cartridge out, loading reagents on the back of the cell shuttle, and that's pretty much all that they're doing. They're not manipulating. They don't need to know how to shake a bag. They don't need to do all of that stuff because the robots inside of the cell shuttle do that. We don't talk a lot about this, but people have been asking more and more about this, so I want to tell you that IDMO, we call it Integrated Development Manufacturing Organization. We use a different moniker than the CDMO because our IDMO can produce 10 times more batches in the equivalent amount of space at up to half the price. So when you're producing that kind of value story, I think a different name is appropriate. So what do? We also have full process development in-house. People have asked me about that. What about my process isn't fully worked out? We have full process development. We have full analytical development in our facility. So bring in, if your process isn't fully done, we can work with you on that. We have full people that do all of that. We also have regulatory support. We're going to have a DMF that you can reference on all of that. So we have the full capabilities of any third-party manufacturing company that you would expect. It's all there. Also, for those companies that are in early development, we have a turnkey CAR-T process. That turnkey CAR-T process is drag and drop your vector into there. Standard analytical package, standard regulatory package that's in there, pre-designed work plan, eliminates all the tech transfers you need to do, and fully automated manufacturing runs. We already have a lot of data on that, so you can figure out what's going on, figure out what you want to do, but you get a lot further into your development, much closer to the clinic, by just using a turnkey CAR-T process. Also, for the companies in the U.S., last week we announced that the FDA gave us the AMT designation, that's Advanced Manufacturing Technology designation. How does that benefit companies? Listen, come quickly, because after a few of these, the FDA will declare, we get it. It's no longer new. So if you want to take advantage of expedited relationships with the FDA and accelerating your dialogue with the FDA, come quickly. Let's work together on this and let's accelerate your program. AMT designation was by CBER. The intent is there to encourage the adoption of technologies that would promote efficiency, quality, and scalability of advanced therapies. So we were given that designation. I'm not sure if anybody else has gotten, or at least nobody else has announced that. And anybody who works with us that wants to take advantage of that will have, priority access to the FDA. So I banged away at technology. We used to spend a lot more time talking about the technology, but we found out that unless you come see us, you're still going to be, what is it, and what's going on? So I'm here. Let's schedule. Come to one of our facilities, and we'll show you. Love to show you, and then you'll understand. So mitigating your risk with Cellares. Two things. Speaking right to the biotech companies: extend your runway and scale as needed. Extend your runway and scale as needed. How are we going to extend your runway? This is sort of the overview slide. You're going to have, during clinical development, you will have no clean room fees and no reservation fees. You know that you're paying for clean rooms when you're in clinical development with any other CDMO. You'll have no clean room fees and no reservation. Add that up and see how much savings that is. And then, because of that immediate economies of scale, already in the clinic, you're going to have up to 50% lower batch prices. You add all of that up, and you're going to be able to save enough money to reserve capacity in the future when you need it. Not in clinical, when the cash is tough, when the cash is low, the burn rate always seems to go much faster than you think. Not then. We're saving you money at that point. Look, we did an analysis for a certain client of ours, and we wanted to see, when do things pay back? So the investment to do a tech transfer to the IDMO, that's in red. By 28 batches, they will have paid for in savings compared to a CDMO. By 28 batches, they will have paid for in savings for that investment into the tech transfer into the IDMO. And if they do the whole clinical program by 285 batches, they'll have a 10 times return on investment compared to your conventional CDMO costs that they would have had. And that's the batch prices and the clean room fees put together. So if you do your whole clinical program, you have a 10x return versus a conventional CDMO. So takeaways from that, just so you know, our tech transfer costs are about the same as any other CDMO on how you do that. Maybe a little faster, but about the same cost. So about the same cost in 28 batches, about 28 batches you paid for in savings for that tech transfer. And if you've done your whole program, you'll have a 10x return on your investment. So if that doesn't extend your runway, I don't know what does. And then you scale as needed. All right, scale is needed. Look, we had a big announcement that we made this big deal, this big $380 million deal with BMS, and everybody's thinking, is that the cost to pay to play with Cellares? I got to come up with $380 million. No. You scale as needed. So you realize immediate economy scales that I talked to you about, and then when you get into commercial, you start thinking about when the money starts coming in, when you have revenue coming in, not when you're burning cash, but when you're making cash. That's when you start making reservations. So let me show you how that's going to work. All right, these are three curves. The gray curve on the bottom, which I should have made bolder because it's kind of invisible to see, that's sort of your batch demand. All right, these are sort of your generic batch demand. You have a certain batch demand during your clinical development. You could say the curves are not right or whatever, but it's just directional. All right, so just so you understand the picture. Your batch demand is that gray curve, right? It goes up slowly as you're in clinical development. And then as you get commercial, it starts to rise. You have two cash burn curves. The red one is with your conventional CDMO, and the blue one is with Cellares. That whole blue bar there, that if you notice there's a blue vertical bar that says no IDMO reservation fees. You're not paying any reservation fees there. You'll notice that reservation fee is not being paid until a little past your launch date. Why? Because your launch also costs a lot of money. So a little bit after that, and then you never know, right? You never have a full year launch. You always have it'd be great if you could launch on January 1, but that never happens. Usually happens in the middle of the year, the third quarter, some kind of cumbersome part of the year, so it's not there. So you're already not reserving it. So that whole time you're not saving, you're not paying for, so let me blow up that little section there on the bottom. So when we look at that little section there, look at that difference between your CDMO, conventional CDMO, and Cellares. That savings is big money. That savings is big money. If you go home and start calculating, okay, if I have to save this money on batches, and I have to save this money on all these clean rooms, that's big money. That's easily enough money to make your first reservation for your first 1,000 or 2,000 doses after your launch. Easily, way more than that. And what's going to happen by working with Cellares is your savings are always going to be way ahead of your reservation needs. And then you're not carrying around this big ball and chain, which is a big factory around your neck, and you don't know. Everybody has forecasts, but you actually don't know what your sales curve is going to look like. So you actually don't know how much you should be reserving. Here we give you a chance to hedge, so you're not reserving too much, and we can scale to reserve more if you need it pretty fast. Does that save you runway? I think so. And then when you want to actually reserve, we have three models. In the clinical development setting, we have a shared equipment model. Because the Cell Shuttle can do 16 processes, same or different, at the same time, because none of the processing shares fluid pathways. Because you can do that, we can run many processes all at once in the same shuttle. So in the beginning, the clinical setting, take advantage of all that space by not playing clean rooms and just running your process in there. So shared equipment in the clinical setting. Then you can start moving when you get into commercial and reserve some capacity, start having some dedicated equipment. Maybe you start out with a single shuttle or a couple of shuttles and some Cell Q, and that's already 1,000, 2,000 doses right there. Reserve some of that. It's only for you, dedicated to you, to manufacture. And then as you get bigger, we could even build a dedicated smart factory for you. So think big, dream big. We could even build a factory for you that we run for you if you have a pipeline and have huge amount of sales. Some of these autoimmune indications and some of the things that are in the works right now are going to need a lot of capacity, a lot of capacity. And why? Why are we talking about this? Because it isn't because these therapies don't work. They absolutely work. It isn't because these therapies aren't safe. They are absolutely safe. So why is money not flowing into biotech for this? Because it isn't available, and it isn't economical. We're attacking both those things, availability and costs, with this technology. So extend your runway up to 50% reduction in batch prices, no clean room fees while you're in clinical manufacturing, recoup your tech translation costs in 28 batches. If you do your whole clinical program, you have a 10x return on investment versus a conventional CDMO. And then you scale as needed. Don't have this albatross, this millstone around your neck. Scale as needed. You don't need to reserve capacity until you start launching and you get some money into the house. All right, so realize immediate economies of scale because we only have one SKU, capacity reservations when you have money and when you need it, and build and reserve capacity as you need it. Questions? I guess we're not taking questions. Yeah. It depends on the process, and it depends on your BOM. So I can't give you a ballpark on that. Yes. Well, it's not 16 all in one day. We do 4 one day, but once all 16 are full, as they come on, you reload. Yeah, and then, but when it's at full capacity, you just keep switching out you pull out and reload, pull out and reload. So there's no clean out, there's no any of that stuff. Nobody's made 40,000 doses in a single factory yet. So yes, of course, it's a projection.
I think we have to go to the next speaker. So okay. Thank you so much for your time.